Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Blitzkrieg, our own strategic affairs show. Today, I'm going to speak about something which is not normally spoken about in the media. There have been insinuations, there has been a lot of conversation in the social media, but nothing concrete. Today's episode is to give you something more robust about an agency that we all know as the Research and Analysis Wing, or RAW. And it goes back to 1962. The wound of 1962 just would not heal. We had been defeated by the Chinese. The humiliation just would not go away. And then came the 1965 war with Pakistan. In both the wars, intelligence gathering and analysis was identified as a black hole. We simply did not get information in time, and when we did, it was mostly not accurate. The Intelligence Bureau was responsible for foreign and domestic intelligence, and somehow, in spite of immense resources and political reach, it failed to deliver. India needed a lean and specialized foreign intelligence agency that would do whatever it took to deliver, and this agency would have carte blanche. It would operate in the shadows and, like smoke, go where it wanted. It would operate globally in that grey area, which would give India plausible deniability. It would not be an agency in the narrow Indian context, but a wing of the Cabinet Secretariat, and hence not answerable to the Parliament of India. So they decided to structure it on the lines of the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America. In 1968, the Government of India created the Research and Analysis Wing under the legendary Spy Master. RAW was in the beginning a part of the Intelligence Bureau, but later branched off into an independent unit. The role of RAW, or RNAW, as its operatives like to call their mother agency, is hazy. It is, however, agreed that RAW takes care of India's interests globally. Its role includes, but is not limited to, covert operations, foreign intelligence gathering, monitoring political, economic, and technical developments in enemy countries, molding of opinion in foreign countries, and other tasks that may be given from time to time. There have been insinuations and accusations of RAW's involvement in assassinations and overthrow of foreign regimes thought unfriendly to India. When former Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa lost the 8 January 2015 election by a humiliating margin, he blamed RAW in an interview given to Hong Kong's South China Morning Post newspaper. He said that RAW used the Indian embassy in Colombo to stage manage his defeat because he was getting too close to the Chinese. Similarly, RAW was blamed for the 1st June 2001 massacre of the Nepalese royal family by Prince Dipendra, the Crown Prince of Nepal. These allegations were made in 2001 by Pushpa Kamal Dahal, also known as Prachanda, former Prime Minister of Nepal and an avowed Maoist. Prachanda was blatantly pro-China and was pushing for mainstreaming the Maoist party in Nepal towards total power. Some conspiracy theorists say that Prachanda is probably next. Who knows? However, RAW has always maintained that it neither has the mandate, intent, nor capability to carry out such operations, and that it is simply an information gathering setup. Research and analysis, that is what RAW does, that is what it means. RAW is headed by a Secretary, Research, in the Cabinet Secretariat, and is colloquially referred to as Chief of RAW. The position reports to the Prime Minister of India, but administratively, Secretary Research reports to the Cabinet Secretary. For operational matters, Secretary Research works with the NSA. Earlier, the JIC, or the Joint Intelligence Committee, was the umbrella organization responsible for coordination of intelligence efforts between IB, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and RAW. But with the creation of the National Security Council, the NSC is the intelligence mothership. It controls all intelligence organizations and is headed by the NSA. RAW's first major success was the 1971 Indo-Pak War. It worked closely with IB, the Indian Army, Navy, and Air Force. It oversaw the recruitment, funding, and training and deployment of the Mukti Bahini, or the Mukti Jodha. In 1975, RAW oversaw the deposing of Sikkim's Chogyal rulers and its integration into India as a state. It did the background intelligence work, and the Indian Army did the rest. Over the years, as the organization evolved, it started adding capabilities, all of them vicious. Some were sharp-edged, the others blunt. Electronic and Technical Services (ETS) and Radio Research Center (RRC) are two organizations that deal specifically with signals intelligence, coalition of data, Analysis and Electronic Warfare. ARC, or the Aviation Research Center, is a specialized unit that does aerial reconnaissance for RAW and is also heavily involved in satellite imagery. The National Technical Research Organization, NTRO, is responsible for very high-end electronic surveillance and internet monitoring. It was the body behind the Balakot strikes. It is in effect a highly technical intelligence gathering organization that is the feeder to other intelligence services and the Indian Armed Forces. It also has largely confidential capabilities in cryptology, remote sensing, and cyber warfare. In the mid-50s, the CIA and the Intelligence Bureau established the Mustang base in Mustang, Nepal. This base was used for training Tibetans in guerrilla warfare and covert operations behind enemy lines. Cut to the disaster of 1962, an Intelligence Bureau put an enormous amount of pressure on the Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. The time for peace with China was over. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was a lie. Intelligence Bureau was cryptic and clear. India needed a special force which could fight deep inside China. A high-altitude specialist force consisting of soldiers who were born and raised in such super high altitudes. This force would have the best weaponry and would consist entirely of paratroopers. On 14th November 1962, Special Frontier Force, or the SFF, was created. The core groups consisted of pure Tibetans. The SFF would be used for covert and clandestine intelligence gathering operations, special operations inside Chinese territory, direct action, reconnaissance, and other secret missions. CIA, US Green Berets, and India's Intelligence Bureau trained the force. Though the exact numbers are not known, its strength is set to stand at 10,000 soldiers today. SFF is stationed at Chakrata in Uttarakhand. It is also known as Establishment 22. It is named after Major General Sujan Singh Oban, who commanded 22 Mountain Division. If you find Indian Army officers referring to something called Vikas, it is the SFF battalions that they are speaking about. RAW had all its bases covered except one. It still felt the need for a very small unit of highly elite Special Forces soldiers and officers. This unit would carry out what is commonly known as Black Ops, an oft-used euphemism for selective operations with total and absolute deniability. These operations would be so sensitive and secret that the government of India would never own up to them. It would bluntly deny any knowledge of the operation. This unit would not exist on paper. It would be a ghost unit. In 1981, the Director General of Security launched Project Sunray. A colonel of 10 para-special forces was quietly moved out from his unit and asked to handpick 250 of the best special forces men in India that he could find. This was the ultra-secret special group, the existence of which was denied years before it was hesitatingly and grudgingly accepted. Even now, its officers and men cannot be photographed. The SG became RAW's hammer. It would carry out operations that were too dangerous, too secret, or just too inconvenient for anyone else to touch. The core of Special Group is Para-SF, and it is stationed in Sarsawa in Uttar Pradesh. SG has been deliberately kept in the shadows. The only time people saw SG operators was after the assassination of Indira Gandhi in 1984. There was no SPG or Special Protection Group at that time to protect the Prime Minister. Indira's own bodyguards had killed her. No one could be trusted. The Indian Army does not guard politicians, not even the Prime Minister of India. There was no alternative. The task was given to RAW. Suddenly, the power corridors of New Delhi woke up one fine morning to tall, bearded men with long hair carrying sophisticated automatic weapons. These men donned black dungarees and wore no ranks. They enforced an absolute wall of silence. Nobody knew what was happening. They protected Rajiv Gandhi till the time the SPG was created and made operational in 1985. And then they went back to Sarsawa. I had the opportunity to interact with a Delhi police veteran who spoke of those dark days when Delhi had descended into chaos. He had to meet someone at the PMO and ran into 2 SG operators. They were terrifying, he said. I asked him why he thought so. I don't know, he said. They were really quiet and menacing. They did not speak. I have spent my entire life in the police force. The eyes of an individual never lie. But these guys, their eyes were dead. No emotions. Yes, they were terrifying. There have been rumors about SG operations in the media. Were they involved in Operation Blue Star? Does SG operate in civil clothes in Kashmir? No one knows for sure. RAW has always been extremely secretive. Everything is always on a need-to-know basis, very strictly. They are paranoid, and for a good reason. It was in 1978, and RAW was desperate to know about the progress Pakistan had made in uranium enrichment. But the Khan Research Laboratories at Kahuta in Pakistan was guarded like a fort. There was no way to get information. It was then that the raw operative in Pakistan hit upon an idea. Simple yet brilliant. Scientists from Kahuta came outside the complex to get haircuts. He started collecting hair samples from barber shops in Kahuta. The hair samples of scientists were sent to India. The laboratories here confirmed India's worst fears. Pakistan had developed the ability to enrich uranium to weapons-grade quality. Ross soon had agents running inside Kahuta. Information began to flow. It was during a phone call between Morarji Desai and General Ziaul Haq that the Indian PM inadvertently let slip that India knew what Pakistan had achieved in Kahuta. It was a slip of the tongue by the Indian Prime Minister. Repercussions followed. Zia ordered a cleanup of Kahuta. Raw agents were caught and killed. Our agents inside Pakistan were massacred. In the 1980s, RAW had neutralized ISI's capabilities by setting up two new units called Counterintelligence X, CITX for Pakistan, and Counterintelligence J for Khalistan terrorism. ISI used to smuggle drugs and weapons into India using trusted smugglers and routes. RAW corrupted these smugglers and started sending weapons back into Pakistan using them. This program was so successful that ISI stopped interfering in Punjab. In 1997, RAW suffered a massive setback. Prime Minister I.K. Gujral wanted peace with Pakistan, and he wanted peace to such an extent that he ordered the closure of CITX and CITJ as a goodwill gesture towards Pakistan. It is said that hundreds of agents and their identities were compromised. Many RAW agents and assets inside Pakistan were killed. This set back RAW's capabilities by decades, a setback from which they've still not recovered fully. It takes backbreaking work and funds to create an operative or a double agent, and takes time, trust, and bandwidth. The CIA has gone on record to say that RAW provided valuable inputs leading to the neutralization of Osama bin Laden. It was RAW that sent a message to ISI telling them that President Pervez Musharraf was about to be assassinated. Musharraf was saved just in time. They did this possibly because at that time the government of India wanted Musharraf alive. And it was RAW that launched Operation Chanakya and engineered a vertical split in the Kashmir-based terror groups. It created pro-India groups that started decimating the ranks of the terrorists. RAW has been involved in almost each high-security operation or incident since the time of its inception, be it Kargil or 26/11. They have trained African intelligence agencies to work against the apartheid regime. In South Africa, launched Operation Cactus to save a friendly regime in Maldives from external invasion, and gave an accurate and actionable intelligence for the Indian Army to be able to launch Operation Meghdoot in Siachen Glacier. It even trained a RAW operative so well that he was able to join the Pakistani army as an officer and rise up to the rank of a major. According to Chanakya, there are 4 ways of defeating an enemy. Some is by way of convincing and giving advice. Our diplomats follow this path. Dam is by way of enticing by money and rewards, and our political leaders do this by investing in other countries to buy influence. When the above does not bend people to our will, Dand is used, and this is by way of using force and is done by the armed forces of India. But sometimes India has to use the 4th path advocated by Chanakya, called Bhed. This is by way of deception. RAW follows the 4th path. You cannot always protect a nation by following the rule book. Enemies who mean us mortal harm surround us, and they do not abide by the norms of ethical conduct of war. They use subterfuge and cunning. They are guided by deceit and lies. Hence our answer must be in the same language of subterfuge and deceit. On a cold Sunday afternoon in January 2017, I sat down for lunch with a former RAW officer. We were in Connaught Place, New Delhi, and we spoke about everything but work. That was the understanding. But I had to ask him one question, and I did. Sir, why do you do what you do? Why did you do what you did? What he said will stay with me forever. He said, I follow no rules. Maybe there is no morality in what I do, but my swan dharma is to protect India. I will make any compromise, go to any length, and break any rule of God and man to protect India. I know I will never be acknowledged. My work is such, and I willingly choose to live in the shadows. As we finished lunch, I walked him outside the restaurant. We shook hands. Jai Hind, sir, I said in the time-honored Indian Army tradition. Jai Hind, Major, said the old spy. He put on his golf cap, wrapped a muffler around his neck and walked away slowly, merging into the lazy Sunday crowd. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on this very interesting episode of Blitzkrieg. I'll be joining you in a few days with another episode and I'll talk to you about something else that impacts our strategic environment. From our team and me at Blitzkrieg, Jai Hind.